Hello and welcome to our mindful eating class. I'm Marla Pelletier, and I really hope in this class that I can serve as a guide for you to deepen your own self-awareness. I've used these tools, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, to help grow my strength of self-inquiry, of observation, of deepening the self-awareness muscle. And so today we're going to talk about mindful eating. And I just want to share that this is not about what we're eating. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not going to evaluate the energy and the nutrition of your food. But we are going to think about the how, the why, and the when, and what informs those. So take all of the information you learned today and revisit it in a week, in a few days, and really ask yourself these questions. Each time you ask, you get a little deeper. So firstly, mindful eating, the program that I was trained in, was developed by Kristeller, who is a University of Indiana professor of psychology who studied mindful eating for binge eaters. And she does educate people on the benefits of mindful eating and sharing this with others as teachers. So her definition of mindful eating is deliberately paying attention to your food and the experience of eating while suspending judgment. And this piggybacks on the definition of mindfulness, which is mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment while suspending judgment. So paying attention on purpose, making a decision in the present moment, what's going on right here, right now, while suspending judgment. So the judgment piece is really what separates mindfulness in so many ways from just presence, than just paying attention. And her teacher or colleague in this is Jon Kabat-Zinn. And so that definition of mindfulness comes from Jon Kabat-Zinn. If we go back into like the roots of mindfulness, we really learn that the root word that comes from Pali, which is an old Indian language, really has this aspect of paying attention and also remembering. Okay, so we're kind of moving into this modern definition of mindfulness. And so when we overlay the lens of mindfulness on eating, what we're paying attention to is both the outer triggers that encourage us to eat. We're paying attention to the internal triggers and desires, and we're balancing all of that information. So the way that Kristeller outlines this is she really talks about our outer knowledge or our outer wisdom and our inner wisdom. And so our outer knowledge are a lot of things you could go out and learn from somebody else, right? We can learn about the nutritional value of food. We can learn about the calories in and out, our metabolic rate, what we should be eating for certain disease management. But the thing that only you can answer is what is going on inside. So that's why this process of self-inquiry and deepening self-awareness really dives into the inner wisdom that is in you. So these are the thoughts that you have around food. This could be the stories, the things you've learned about food. Emotions. Do emotions trigger you to eat or encourage you to keep eating? Your own hunger level or hunger signals. Again, nobody can talk to you about how you're feeling in your body and hunger. The flavor and the satisfaction of the food itself. And your level of fullness. Also, how does thirst play into it? Thirst versus hunger. So mindful eating really is this middle way between the mindless overeating that we might be familiar with when we go to a buffet and very restrictive dieting that has, rules outlined that we have to follow to a T. So what I want to focus on today is hunger signals. And I want you to just ask yourself right now, do you know what your hunger signal is? Do you know what the primary physical signal, internal inner wisdom that you get when you're hungry. Do you even allow yourself to feel a pang of hunger before you eat? So I want you to consider some of the triggers that encourage us to eat. We might be encouraged to eat when we're celebrating, right? It's a holiday, it's a birthday. We might be encouraged to eat because we're in a social situation. We go out to eat with our friend, and that's the order. We have to order some food, and that's how we're engaging in our social life. We might eat to self-soothe. Might be a habit that's formed over a long time. Every time I have a bad day, I come home and I have a bowl of ice cream. Okay. We eat food. We're triggered to eat food because we see it, because we crave it. I see a billboard of McDonald's, and the next thing I know, I'm hungry and I'm headed to McDonald's. Our eyes kind of feed us this information. And so with mindfulness, we really are developing a sense of sensory clarity in many ways. We're starting to fine tune what are the signals I'm getting and which signal am I going to choose to pay attention to. Okay, so I want you just for a moment to consider, how is your physical hunger different than psychological hunger? You might be an emotional eater. You might eat because you have a certain experience and it encourages you to eat. And it may not be based on the physical sensations. Okay, there are all types of us out there, right? That might not be you. Maybe you're only inspired to eat when there's a physical feeling of hunger. And so research does show that we can be tricked into eating food when we're not physically hungry, right? Like our eyes are bigger than our bellies. Maybe we're at a buffet. It looks like really excellent food. We have a plate this size and we just fill the plate. We're externally triggered, or we're depending on external information to make food decisions. The plate is this big, I'm going to fill up this much food. At the restaurant, this size of a meal is given to me. They tell me it's one serving. I eat the whole thing. So become aware of that. Become of when we have an external signal that tells us how, why, what, or when to eat. If you're used to eating lunch, let's say at noon, do you feel physical hunger at noon? Or do you just eat because that's the time you have? And remember, when we ask these questions, we're asking them non-judgmentally. Rather than becoming self-critical with your own answers or with what you discover, instead, put a little space between yourself and the answer and simply observe, what is the answer? And can I look at it without saying, this is right, this is wrong? So one of the things we do know about the difference between physical and psychological hunger is that some of the actual chemicals, some of the chemicals within our body that are triggered when we're anxious are actually similar to the chemicals triggered when we're hungry. So we can get an internal mixed bag of signals about what's actually making us hungry. So our work this week in this workshop is going to be simply tuning in to our hunger signals. So beginning to ask ourselves some key questions about what makes us hungry, how it feels to be hungry, and grading ourselves or putting ourselves on a scale of hunger. So the scale of hunger I'm going to introduce in our practice is from 0 to 10. 0 is not at all hungry, and 10 is the most hungry I've ever been. And we're going to ask ourselves where we are on that scale. And this scale can be used over and over again. Every meal, every snack, every time we have that pang of, oh, I want to eat something. We can dial in, see what's going on inside, rate ourselves on the scale without anyone even knowing it. I am pretty guilty of going to the grocery store hungry and making an impulse purchase of usually something that has some chocolate in it. And if I ask myself, am I hungry? I'm sure that I'll have some additional knowledge. And perhaps what I'll learn is that, yeah, I'm hungry, but an apple's probably better. So just creating that little bit of space between the trigger, the impulse, the desire, and then the action, creating the space between those sometimes leads to a beautiful blossoming that can help us change and transform our habits. So our next video is going to have our practice. You may not choose to watch this instructional video again, but the practice video next, I encourage you to try a few times. Try it in the morning before you eat. Try it after a meal. Try different levels of hunger that you're experiencing and just see what comes up. Okay, taking these same practices, putting them in new situations and new times in your life will yield different levels of different answers and different amounts that you can kind of sink more into self-awareness. All right, I'll see you in the next video.